Okay, I see that we're recording.
Yes, Madam Chair, you are recording.
Fabulous. Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, then I will again officially on the record call this April 20th, 2023 meeting of the Municipality of Anchorage Board of Ethics to order. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair. Ms. Went Pearson,
Here.
Mr. Goodstein,
Here.
Mr. Kelly,
Here.
Ms. Mogadin,
Here.
and Mr. Teagarden.
Uh-oh, I think he might be frozen.
Yes, I think so. But you do have a quorum of 5 members.
Perfect. Thank
and Mr.
you.
Teagarden, sometimes if you turn your video off, that can be the issue.
Well, I had wanted to start with a quick hello and introductions. Oh, yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
All right. Yes, I can.
Perfect. All right. Well, if you permit a slight divergence from the agenda, I wanted to start with a quick hello and introduction to our new members. I apologize for not getting the chance to meet with the two of you in person before your first meeting. I've been in Washington, D.C. on business for the past week. I think it might be helpful to go around and do quick introductions. I'm Becky Wint Pearson. I'm the current chair of the board. I've served on the board since 2021, and then I served previously for a period of, I think, 3 years before 2017 when I left to serve as the municipal attorney for the municipality for a period of years. Professionally, I'm an attorney. I serve as a general counsel and a senior vice president overseeing essentially law and government affairs and community affairs and corporate communications at GCI. And I'm so glad to have both of you on board. Abram and Kelly, Abram and Terry, do you want to introduce yourselves? And then we'll ask Kelly and Patrick to introduce themselves as well.
Sure, I can go. First of all, it's great meeting you, Kelly and Patrick. I'm Abram. I'm actually a rabbi over here at Congregation Beth Shalom. And I've been serving on this board for, a couple years now. And it's been quite enjoyable. So I'm really thrilled that we have you two on. We've been struggling to make a quorum. So with you here, we can do that much better and easier, which is really exciting.
Well, and Kelly and Patrick, welcome. Thank you so much for joining the board. I'm Terry Kelly. I'm a philosopher, so we've got lawyers and philosophers and rabbis. So we've got like a
joke.
Well, right? Yeah. There's some second half to the joke.
That's definitely a like walked into a bar joke.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely right. And so, yeah, welcome. I think if we, I think, and Abram might be able to speak to the same, but certainly, being on the Board of Ethics is a really interesting kind of board because it's legal, but as they might say in my business, like you're very worried about the spirit of the law in so many ways that a lot of the discussions that we have are really interesting. It's a very stimulating board to be on. We usually have really, really good discussions and inquiry. It's very good deliberations. And so, thanks for taking the time. It's also a time-consuming board sometimes. So thanks so much for volunteering to be a part of the group.
We'd call it Talmudic in my profession. Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, I think they quit. That was it. That drove them.
It was the Talmudic. I was
That's
like,
a record.
no.
I can understand why we're having problems getting people to fill the seats on this board.
So I'm Kelly Mogadam, and I'm a lifelong Alaskan. Grew up in Fairbanks, and then went to San Diego for college and law school, and made it back to Anchorage. I missed Alaska, but not quite Fairbanks, so didn't make the list. And I'm an attorney here in town. I practice mostly oil and gas and regulated utilities. Mostly what I focus on, some municipal work as well. I just recently in 2020 graduated from the University of Washington and got my MBA. And surprisingly, doing that program made me realize I have a lot of free time. And so I thought, now that I'm done with that program, what should I do with my free time? And I thought maybe giving back to the community in whatever way possible would be a good fit. So here I am.
Excellent. Thank you for your willingness to serve. This really is, I think, increasingly a critical board, especially in current times where I feel like sort of distrust of government and people's distrust of one another within government is at an all-time high. I think we've been a key voice in trying tempering kind of some of that and hearing people's concerns and being responsive to them. So I appreciate your willingness to serve. Did we lose Patrick? He actually did flee. I'm blaming you, Terry, for scaring him away.
It's always my it.
Philosophers.
Gadflies to the end, you know. It's, they say in the good place, this is why everyone hates moral professors, right? You know, moral.
Kelly, did you go to Lathrop or West Valley?
I went to Monroe.
Oh, you went to Monroe. Okay. My husband went to Lathrop.
Oh, okay.
He thankfully also did not want to move back to Fairbanks because I was like, oh.
Yeah. My dad's still back there, so we go back to visit here and there, but I try to convince my dad to come here more than I go there, especially in the winter.
Oh, it looks like Patrick is back. Let's let him in. Patrick, are you there?
I'm here, and I'm sorry. I don't normally use Teams outside of my work, and so I'm using a different. I don't want to use my work system for that. That would be probably unethical or something. So I apologize, but I will. I think this will work good.
That's fine. I'm glad that you didn't flee after our introductions. Do you want to take a minute and introduce yourself, and then I'll turn to any of the staff who are present who you guys haven't yet had a chance to meet with?
Sure thing. I'm Patrick Teagarden. Lived here in Alaska since about 2001. I've been a pilot for most of my career, business owner, and currently I'm an FAA inspector. Most of my job involves assuring regulatory and safety compliance of airlines and pilots. I do a lot of investigation for that right there and do negotiations to bring them into compliance and if required, enforcement actions. So that's what I do. I've got a family here with my wife, Kathy, and I've got 2 kids that live locally. So they're all grown up.
Excellent. Well, I said it to Kelly and I'll say it to you as well. Thank you so much for your willingness to serve on this board and give your time to the municipality as part of the Board of Ethics. Anybody, I know you guys got to meet with Paul. Anyone on staff who hasn't had a chance to meet these guys face to face who wants to say hi and explain your role in helping to staff the board?
Sure. This is Megan Carmichael. I'm an assistant municipal attorney with the municipality, and I provide procedural advice to the board along with Paul. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. But I know that Paul has talked with you guys, hopefully, so I appreciate Paul's involvement in his role with that. But yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions about procedural issues or anything like that that comes up. Thank you.
Oh, hi, and I'm Paul, and I know I've talked to you over email, but I just wanted to introduce myself in person. I'm the administrative hearing officer for the municipality, and before that, I've spent the majority of my career as a judge advocate in the Marine Corps, doing primarily criminal law. So that's kind of my background. But again, like I explained over the phone, I kind of view Megan and I's role in many respects as kind of being your law clerk almost. That, you know, we do a lot of the drafting and kind of research for you, because we have a little bit more time. So please feel free to task us in any questions that you have or anything that you need done.
Clerk's office team, do you guys want to say hi as well?
Hello, board members. My name is Jennifer Veneklausen. I got to meet Kelly and Patrick when we did their oath of office earlier this week. The clerk's office serves as your administrative support for this board. So we schedule your meetings, we take minutes, we create agenda packets, just do the administrative side of the board's work. And my colleague Carissa Sleppy is here. She's going to be training to take over some of this work. So, and then Jenna Brister, you'll see her sending you things as well. So you have a whole lot of support from the municipality to do your important work.
Great, thank you all. Thank you for entertaining my desire to do some introductions before we dive in. For the new members, we have been meeting consistently virtually, except for in certain instances where it's made sense to be in person when we are hearing from a complainant or respondent or witness and with respect to a ethics complaint for potential violation. We do not have to follow either of those procedures. We kind of play it, but it has been the preference of the board and what is easiest. So certainly feel free to contribute your thoughts on whether we should continue to be virtual or whether there are times when we should be in person. As Jennifer explained, we do, I think over email, we have the 2 invites because there are several types of matters that we'll consider in executive or deliberative session where we move to another virtual space and leave a notice up for the public in this space, which is open to the public, that we are discussing something in a closed session and we'll return. With that, do I have a motion to approve the agenda for today?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second? Anyone?
Second?
All right, all those in favor of approving the agenda? Aye.
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 All right, the agenda stands approved as drafted. On to minutes of our previous meeting. Do the board members need a moment to review, or are we ready to entertain a motion with respect to the minutes? Taking a pause to need a moment to review.
Not there, but yeah, let me just, I'm
pretty short, yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that looks good to me.
Yeah, looks good to me.
All right, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
And I believe this is one that the members who were not present at the meeting should be recused from voting on, but Madam Clerk, correct me if I'm off base there.
Madam Chair, they are able to vote if they would like. Since you have a quorum without the new members, if you feel more comfortable recusing yourself, you can, but you are able to vote if you so choose.
All right, I will leave that to the discretion of the new members to determine whether you would like to vote or recuse yourself.
I'm Patrick Teagard, and I'll recuse.
Same here.
All right, remaining membership. Do I have a vote? All those in favor of approving the minutes as included in the packet, say aye.
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 Aye from me as well, and those are approved. All right, on to the consent agenda. And for new members, these are standard disclosure forms that are filed by all new public servants. So actually, Madam Clerk, did we have the new members fill out their disclosure forms already?
Yes, Madam Chair, they did, and they returned them, but they'll be on your May agenda.
Perfect. Okay, so you're familiar with these forms because you recently completed them yourself. Generally, we review for any questions, concerns, or inconsistencies, and then approve those in bulk that we are comfortable with, and we'll pull anything from the consent agenda where we have follow-up questions or concerns or want to have further discussion. Do we need a moment to look at the disclosures, or has everyone had a chance to review them?
I reviewed them.
This is the first set where I feel like everything is filled out correctly.
I know, I felt the same way. I was like, this is a very well done set. Maybe people are getting better. For the new members, we have had a series of months where people like don't put down what board they're on, or they don't check any of the boxes.
Need training.
Yes, or like close reading skills. Do I have a motion then to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, those are unanimously approved. And now we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is the board policy on confidentiality, redaction, and distribution of board reports. Paul, can you remind us where we are on this item?
Sure, absolutely. So just kind of as a brief background for this policy memo. So what the motivation was is that there was oftentimes questions each time a report was issued, should the respondent's name be in this report? Should the complainant's name be in? And really the goal was to develop consistent procedures that could be used every time, or for the majority of the time, so there wouldn't be any question about that. So Megan and I actually did some research and came up with a memo explaining what we thought the code required as far as what information should be redacted usually. So the board deliberated or talked about that memo and then tasked me with turning that memo into a policy memo or a policy of the board that would be published on the board's website. So this is basically, the goal is to be transparent with all the members of the public as far as what's going to be, if they make a complaint of an ethics complaint, is their information going to be released, things like that. So everybody knows kind of what the policies are. So the goal would be, or what the ask here is, for the board to review this and make any suggested changes and then approve it for publication on the website. I know the date needs to be changed, and we'll change that, change the names of the members. As far as the differences between, there is one minor difference between the memo that we outlined in the board approved at the last meeting that we discussed this versus now, and that's right on the bottom of the first page, where it talks about witnesses who testify for an advisory opinion. So what the difference was is that I hadn't really thought through cases where, like, the ombudsman or the municipal attorney request an opinion that really deals with the conduct of somebody else. So somebody else's conduct they're the primary actor in the situation. And I won't discuss anything in a non-confidential form here, but for example, if the ombudsman requested an opinion where somebody else is the primary actor, but if the board wanted that person to appear or gave them the opportunity to appear as a witness, then would that person, the way that I'd written up the previous memo, that person would have almost an absolute right to have their information redacted as a witness. And I don't think the code required that. That's more up to the discretion of the board. So that last sentence was just kind of softened a little bit, where the board would have discretion based on the circumstances on whether that witness, if somebody's appearing as a witness, whether their information would be redacted. And then on the ethics complaints, what this breaks down is there's really a difference between the pre-decisional phase and when the board's report gets distributed. So I talked to Dee about this a lot as far as the history for where those confidentiality requirements came from and really what the intent was. And what she was explaining to me is really the goal here is to not allow people to weaponize the complaint process by making a complaint, publishing it, talking about it in the media, and then it turns out to be unfounded or not warranted. So really that's what we're getting after, is that there's different privacy interests, that whether this is a pending complaint that hasn't been investigated yet versus whether it's a report of the board's findings. So that's basically, the quick version of this. But that, again, what the ask here is, if the board would like to review this or approve it, and then it would be published on the website to explain what the board's policy is.
Thanks, Paul. And for further background for new members, there is some direction regarding confidentiality offered in Section 115 of Municipal Code, but it's very incomplete. And so this is why we were having these consistent questions and sort of grappling with the sort of competing or aligning at times duties to protect people's confidentiality, but also to issue guidance publicly that's accessible to the public, that can be referenced and considered by public servants in considering, their ethics questions. So I know we had a previous discussion of this, I think in February when it first came out. At this point, I don't think I have further questions with respect to the memo, but others, if you have other questions or items you'd like to discuss further, particularly new members for whom this is just your first viewing of this, I would open the floor to the questions and discussion.
I had just one.
Oh, go ahead.
I just had one quick question. I just wanted to confirm that this is the first time the policy has been in a written format, and this is not something that's kind of replacing anything else. Okay.
That's true. And the reason we thought about writing it down is because we've had, this has been an extraordinarily active year for the Board of Ethics. We've had the most ethics complaints for potential violation that the board has ever considered in a single year. And so a lot of people trying to access the ethics complaint and ethics advisory opinion process. And we wanted to try and put these down in writing for consistent use going forward. And then to also, so people could look at them publicly and know the expectation going in and not be caught off guard midway through the process when they realized that we were going to send their complaint, for instance, to the respondent, and that they couldn't just confidentially make a complaint and then like have the respondent never know that they were involved and things like that. We really wanted it to be clear to the public what, so that's, I mean, open to questions about whether it's advisable too, but that was the rationale for asking Paul to do this for the first time, because we wanted to be consistent and transparent as much as possible.
Thank you.
I was just going to say, Paul, thank you. This is great. Going through it, I think it really captures what we were hoping to capture, and as always, it's really high quality work. So thank you. I was wondering, just there is one quirky situation for advisory opinions. When the mayor is requesting an advisory opinion about contemporaneous employment, the code says that his request and our response is to be public. I take that to mean that it's not confidential, or if it is, it's not redacted when the board finally issues the opinion.
What provision of code are you looking at, Terry? Just so much
reference. Yeah, that's 090. 1.15090. It's a very quirky thing. It's only come up once in my time on the board, but it does have that. It's B3C.
Okay.
So Terry, are you saying that like in an advisory opinion, there can be no confidentiality if it's the mayor who's asking for an opinion?
Well, it says the mayor's request and our response are public records. And so, again, I think the only time we've ever had one of these, we interpreted that, I mean, we read it fairly literally, that the request, the mayor's request, and then our response are both, I can't remember if we held it in executive session or not, but we definitely wound up just publishing an unredacted response. In other words, when the mayor submits that, they're not even really supposed to have the option of keeping it confidential, at least in the sense of demanding an unredacted opinion. Among other things, it would be kind of incoherent because you can see this section of the code is talking about the mayor's very specific possible conflict in terms of having full employment with the city, right? So the mayor, unlike other elected officials, is assumed that this is a full-time job, and that the general rule is that alternative employment is inconsistent with the code. So the mayor would be, so it's a very unique kind of case, which we interpreted to mean that whatever we wind up, that both the request and our response are public records.
Could we address that through, if I'm recalling correctly, Paul, didn't you drop in a note that said there, will preserve confidentiality except in instances where like it's not tenable for the board? I'm trying to find the section, like the, because I do feel like that's an exception, right? Because to me, like, even if we were to redact the name, like generally that's what we've done in instances like the one we recently issued where we refer to a person as an assembly member. Like there's no way to anonymize the mayor, right? Like a mayor asked for this, you're like, it's not like a couple extra mayors, like, so I think that would fall under the, I'm just trying to look in Paul's draft about,
yeah, I think that's correct. And then another suggestion, maybe in footnote 1, I could put a small caveat on there where we say, a request for an advisory opinion is confidential unless confidentiality is waived, and maybe address it that way. Like, well, there is this minor, this exception where confidentiality, where a person can't request confidentiality.
And maybe we should make clear that, because like that provision of code only says that the opinion is public record, right? It doesn't say that it has to be, and that's a different question under municipal code, whether or not something is public record. Like I would argue that arguably unredacted versions of opinions in certain instances should be accessible via the public records process, maybe. Like, it's like kind of a different question, right? That's a different set of law of whether you can access any unredacted materials through a public records request. So maybe what we're saying is we read that provision to say that confidentiality is automatically waived for the mayor in the specific instance addressed by 090 B3C. Do we think that's what we're saying, that really there is no confidentiality for that type of request?
Well, I guess you could think
as a footnote, or he's just as written as part of the body of the memo.
I would say probably just a footnote that we just added in there as a clear reference to that, as an instance in which confidentiality is effectively automatically waived, because there is no way to otherwise maintain the confidentiality of the mayor.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could think about it, in terms of like, how would we want to deal with that? I mean, it could be confidential in the sense that, you maybe do it in executive session, right? So it's not full on in open session, but then when we reach our decision, the request and our response are both, not confidential, right? I mean, and so they're not redacted. And I take it this is the only case where the code lays that out, right? That it should be. So we've always read it that it's demanding something higher, that we should treat these differently because it involves a potentially serious conflict with a very unique individual in city government. And so we could say you can have a certain confidentiality during the process, but then when we publish it, it's going to be your request unredacted and our response unredacted.
So that's really not necessarily about confidentiality being waived entirely, but to say where it is. So the board will publish a generic version of the opinion on the municipal website with sufficient deletions to prevent disclosure of the requester's identity. Maybe it's a new footnote after that sentence. Or maybe it's in addition to footnote 3, where we'll publish an unredacted opinion. The requester does not, no, let's see here. The requester waives confidentiality. So what we're really saying is that we will always publish an unredacted opinion with respect to the mayor's requests about contemporaneous employment.
I think that's right. And I'm fine with it being a footnote. I did want something in the memo to indicate that just in case future boards are looking to the memo for guidance, that it's such a quirky part of the code.
Yeah, it's a good point, because I forgot that existed.
Yeah, me too.
Could we leave it with you, Paul, as drafter, to find the appropriate footnote to reference that we will always, I think the framework is we want to make clear that we always will publish an unredacted, I think the point is just the redacted opinion piece, that the opinions with respect to contemporaneous employment of mayors will always be unredacted.
Sure. I think what you mentioned earlier makes sense. Is just to put a footnote after that last sentence, just kind of explaining that small exception.
I think that'd be fine. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a big worked up thing, as long as there's something that people can see, like, oh, wait a minute, there is a unique little thing here, and a footnote's fine.
Terry, could you back up just one moment? Something you mentioned earlier. So we can still receive the mayor in executive session if the mayor wants to keep the conversation confidential. Just the advisory opinion cannot be confidential. Does that sound correct?
I think that's right. I mean, I guess you could go both ways. I mean, like, I think you could say, no, the whole thing has to be public. It's as if you've completely waived confidentiality. And I can't remember if that's what we've only had one case, and it was probably like 10 years ago. An acting mayor was also in counsel for a law firm, and we had to sort of kind of figure out, can he stay in counsel for the law? I can't remember if we required it to be an open, but I'd be comfortable with the idea of saying that people could at least have confidentiality. A mayor could at least have confidentiality that they give, if we ask them to come and they give, an interview, that it's done in an executive session, so they can at least have that much confidentiality. I'm comfortable with that. But the code I don't think spells that out clearly.
Yeah, me too. I'm comfortable with that as well. And that whoever is the mayor may feel more comfortable with that and offer more information, because it's the actual meeting is confidential, even though we will tell the mayor, obviously, that the advisory opinion will not be confidential. You know what I mean? Yeah,
I could see the public interest cutting both ways. Again, it's a very unique situation. So, We need to find Julia. Like, where's Julia when you need her? Like, so the code writers might have been thinking the public would have an interest in, having it be an open testimony in an open meeting. Everything's completely transparent.
I'm
It's
sure this is such an odd provision that I'm sure there's a history. Like, I'm sure there was a mayor who like sought this in private somehow, and that's why we now have this very specific
History of this
Uh,
provision.
like, I'm sure, right? This kind of stuff in the code is always like the relic of some kind of specific question or concern. So,
yeah, with Julia and then Dee leaving, we're slowly losing the framers of the code, and so we now have to reconstruct what their intentions might have been.
yeah. Okay. So, we're back at, let's ask Paul if he can add a footnote to the memo addressing the specific instance in which a mayor requests a review of contemporaneous employment, and then we'll move to approve. Well, are we comfortable approving otherwise? Like, I can just approve once he once we have that change, or we can bring it back to the board.
I mean, I have one very nitpicky thing that's not has to do with this particular conversation.
Okay.
So, are you asking to move on to something else? I mean, what do you?
No,
what do
I
you
was just going to say, are we ready to give that direction to Paul as our motion and then conclude discussion? But if you have other things, then let's bring them up now.
Okay, it's really small. Paul, first of all, this is great. Thank you so much for working on this. I'm in the second page, second paragraph, and in the middle of that paragraph. So it says, the paragraph starts off, if the board accepts the complaint. Does everyone see that? Board's review of potential violation remains confidential. If you go down, it says the respondent will inform the board whether they waive confidentiality when the respondent. Is that when, or should that be if?
Wait, so if the board, are you on page 13 of the packet, section 2A?
Yeah, page 13
If
of the
the
packet.
board, if the
Second
board accepts
paragraph.
the complaint, the board's review of a potential violation remains confidential unless the respondent waives confidentiality. I think that's correct, right? 'Cause we accept the complaint, and then we ask the respondent, we send it to the respondent and ask if you're going to waive confidentiality, and if they waive, then our review is open.
The respondent will inform the board whether they waive confidentiality. And then when they respond, when the respondent has waived confidentiality, or if the respondent has waived confidentiality.
Oh, where does it say? Which line are you looking at?
I'm like 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm like 5 lines down.
Then the respondent has waived confidentiality. Okay.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if that should be an if. That's
Yeah.
it. That's my terribly nitpicky thing.
I think that's fine as an if. I would support the change to an if.
Yeah, I can change that. I think that makes sense.
Okay, sorry, Paul. It's like such a small little itty bitty thing, but you know. Okay, cool. That's all I had.
All right,
Madam-
with that, further,
So, Madam Chair, this is Patrick.
yes, Patrick.
Just having seen this basically just in this meeting, I'd like to have the opportunity to go over and to look over this myself, if it's possible, that we can, if you're looking to actually take a vote to accept it, I'd like to have it delayed till next meeting if possible, if that doesn't cause anybody any problems.
That's fine. We've been working on this for a while. I would say that would then move to have Paul make the 2 minor changes that we've discussed today, and then circulate this again in advance of our next regularly scheduled meeting, and we can plan to vote as a board on this at our May meeting.
That would be
Fine.
great.
Yeah, that was me.
Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor of requesting that Paul make the 2 changes identified, which is the shift from when to if in section 2A and the addition of a footnote calling out opinions addressing contemporaneous employment by the mayor as always being non-redacted, and then continuing the discussion of this until our May meeting, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Excellent. All right, we'll pick that up again next month. Thank
And
you all
Madam
for the
Chair?
discussion. Yes.
If it would be appropriate, what I'll do is I'll review it, and if I have any recommendations, if I could just send them to Paul so he can maybe go over and be prepared next time to have 2 versions if we need to. Would that be acceptable?
Sure. Yeah. If you want to send Paul thoughts beforehand, and then we can review them in the meeting as proposed edits, I think that's fine. I think it'd be good to have us review them as a board beforehand to be productive if that's possible. And then they would need to be routed through the clerk's office to be distributed to the board without being an Open Meetings Act violation.
I'll communicate with Paul, and if they feel it's appropriate to send them out, they can do that. Is it okay?
Yeah, Paul, can you and Jennifer just get together and make sure that anything you get goes to her for us all to see in advance of the meeting as part of our meeting packet?
Sure. Yeah, that sounds good.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you all. All right, we're on to new business. Item 7A, request for advisory opinions 2022-14 and 2022-16. These are confidential, so I'll entertain a motion to move into deliberative session in on our alternate teams invite.
So moved.
Oh, second.
Okay, let's jump. Members of the board,
All
it's
right,
important to
we can all
leave
over
this
there.
meeting, because if you don't, then people in this meeting can still hear what you're saying. So we leave this meeting, go to the other.
Good luck,
Okay.
y'all.
Okay, the board is back in open session. And I would entertain a motion regarding next steps with respect to requests for advisory opinion 2022-14 and 2022-16.
So moved.
Oh, I think we need to specify. So I think the motion
Oh.
would be, the motion would be that we continue consideration of requests for advisory opinion 2022-14 and 16 at our May meeting, and that staff reach out to the requestors on each of the respective requests and to the contractor specified in the request who conducted the training for the election commission. Then we can go with so moved. Do I have a so moved from
Yeah,
you,
I'm
Kelly?
waiting for Kelly now.
Okay, so moved.
Sorry. Yeah, you got to specify that on the record. We have to specify the direction. So
Yeah,
that
that's
they-
the whole thing.
yeah.
Yep,
Is
gotcha.
there a second?
A second.
All right. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Excellent. All right. So now we're on to ethics complaint for potential violation 2022-17. And so we unfortunately need another motion to go back into deliberative session, and we'll hop back over to our other invite to talk about this matter.
To go to deliberative session.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Excellent. Let's go back over there.
All right, off we go. Terry, I'm wondering where else the Board of Ethics is mentioned in the Muni Code. I'm now going to go and search and see where.
I'm curious too. I remember. I think Bill Falsey dug through the charter. I think he said there's like several spots where the board is. Well, yeah, but we're in the charter for the removal stuff too, right? Remember, I think we looked at that a few months ago, right? I mean, so there are these like weird little spots where we keep popping up. I have to admit, I've been on the board forever, and I never heard about that we were in this open meetings chapter. And Megan, that's a good catch, man. That is
that was obscure. Now you found it.
I think we lost the chair.
I was going to say,
no.
We'll wait for her to come back.
With no vice chair, what do we do?
she's back.
Sorry, my Teams is having really weird issues. I can't see any of you.
Oh.
I can only see myself. So I don't know what to do. It's like restarting. So I think I just need to make it through the end of the meeting since we're almost to the conclusion of tonight's meeting. Do I have a motion with respect to ethics complaint for potential violation 2022-17?
I move that the board accept for investigation the first allegation regarding sufficient disclosure of potential conflict of interest, but not the second allegation regarding possible violation of the Open Meetings Act as it is outside. Oh, yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Would you also include a request to staff for next steps in that motion?
I would also include staff contact respondent, or I guess the complainant and the respondent to meet with the board at our June meeting.
All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right.
All right.
Onward.
Hey, with that, I've got to run. I've got to go pick up Elias from school. So.
All right. Thanks, Terry.
Take care. I'll see you all in a few weeks.
Nice meeting you.
Bye, Terry.
Now we're on to the Board of Ethics annual report in our last 10 minutes. And Paul, my primary question for you, I assume you wrote this, Paul, and my primary question was whether we needed to go back and update it now that we are a fully constituted board and have different membership and are no longer facing the challenge of not having sufficient members.
Right, exactly right. So the report's obviously out of date now. I guess the purpose in getting it here is just to discuss and get some preliminary guidance from the board as far as like, does the board want to do an annual report? I know it hasn't been done in about 5 years. And then if the board does want to do an annual report, what year should it cover? And then what information should be in there? And then with that general kind of guideline, I could get a better draft together that incorporates some of those things. The links I sent the new members links to the Board of Ethics website. There is the 2 older reports in there, and the draft, I wouldn't even really call it a draft. It was just kind of, something to get the discussion going. But it is a little bit different from the past reports. The last ones that were submitted were a lot longer and a lot more educational. So, if that's something that the board wants in there, explanation of for example, the new conflict of interest section, if that gets approved, if the board wants an educational section in there. But other than that, it was just to get, spur some discussion, because I think it's just asking or talking with previous staff members, Lisa and Dee and some of the other people that have been around. It really wasn't an intentional thing, I think, to stop doing annual reports. It was just more of, COVID happened and, there was all these things going, and it just kind of fell off the radar for a couple of years.
I think
So
we're required by code to do it, 115,
It's gonna have to, yeah.
170.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we should, because it's a fulfillment of the code. The code doesn't say like may, it says shall. So.
But I agree. I think maybe we should delay it for a little while now that we have new members and we have that new memo. Right?
I
Or what
know,
are
my
we accepting
inclination-
it? Like,
I mean,
what's the action here?
We're supposed to do it on an annual basis. Like, I think the code's pretty clear, so I think it needs to be a 2022, and then we can do another 2023.
I understand.
So my inclination is for us to get something out that concerns 2022, and then and we won't have the new conflict of interest language won't be passed by the assembly, right, until sometime this year. So I assume
It has
that would
actually
be,
been approved.
it was approved, okay,
Mhm.
but still, that was approved in 2023.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. So then are we just, is it our job, is the official action to approve the report?
Or to give additional direction on the report, because there's still some gaps in it, right? I saw the education section, Paul, where you were asking for Megan to include some additional notes.
Right, yeah, it wasn't meant to be, this is obviously not a finalized version, but just with some guidance there as far as like cleaning up that educational section and then rewriting the quorum issue and lack of appointments. So obviously that's a moot issue now, so maybe rewriting some paragraphs there, but
My personal thought is I liked it. I thought the statistics were good. I think we don't need to make it too onerous of a task to do something giant with huge graphics. I think the content was good. I think we do need to update it to address that we now have a fully constituted board, and that's great. And I think it should concern, per the code, I think we should do it on an annual basis. Like, there's no other logical year to me to use other than like the actual calendar year. So I think it should be a 2022 report, and then we should talk about what happened in 2022 and then move on to, I think that's also consistent with past precedent. Like, I looked at past annual reports when I was doing my update to the assembly this year to look at, like, to try and explain to them how numbers had increased on the board, and like numbers of complaints and matters before the board had increased. So I think that doing it on like a January 1 to December 31st basis is consistent with how we've interpreted that code provision in the past.
So
Other thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, do we want to include the education component? Is that what you said? Becky, was that, where was that?
There's a note in Paul's draft that says, Megan, do you want to add something here about the training you did with PBOS?
Okay.
Ah.
There it is.
Megan, do you want to add something about the training you did with PBOS?
Sure. Why not? I mean, I think that was all public, right? I mean, I think that was a publicly offering training, and it was, I think, recorded and all that good stuff. So yeah, why not?
So we just need to add that in, and then it's good, right?
I mean, maybe the direction could be to ask for that to be added in and bring this back to the board in our next meeting, and we can approve it and send it on to, it sounds like we're supposed to send it to the rules committee for the code.
right, yeah, that's correct.
Oh, I thought it went via AIM, the information memorandum, to the assembly on an agenda. Is that not the case?
The 115, 170 says, Board of Ethics shall prepare and present an annual report to the Assembly Rules Committee for review and submission to the Assembly. So I guess they're supposed to review and then submit to the full Assembly.
Interesting. We can do that.
Okay. Do I have a motion with respect to the annual report?
So, okay, I'm trying to think out of where. So I move that we request the education component of the report to be filled out, and then for us to have us to approve for our next meeting. Does that sound accurate?
Sounds good to me. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I Excellent. So we'll come back to that at the conclusion of our next meeting. Any member comments? The next item on the agenda? Okay, hearing none. We have any audience participation? I don't think we have any members of the audience, although I can't really see perfectly. So if there are members of the audience. Anyone see any
Madam
members of the
Chair,
audience?
you have no members of the public have joined you.
Excellent. All right. Our next meeting, I will endeavor to move my schedule around to make May 18th work.
So we are 18th is going to be the date of the next meeting.
That's fine. I have a bunch of things scheduled because we didn't have it on the calendar, but I will, if that works for the rest of the group, I will endeavor to move those things around.
It may not, boy, this is going to complicate for me because if it's going to be in person, that means I have to think about travel time now. Wow. Is it at all possible to make it a half hour earlier?
1:30.
Yeah.
It is no worse for my schedule than the 2 o'clock meeting. Does anyone else have a concern about a 1:30? Terry might. I mean, we probably should check with Terry for his teaching schedule.
Let's do that. Let's check with Terry, but I would prefer to have it a little early because I have a standing 4 p.m. meeting every Thursday. That's in person in my office, so it's hard to move around.
Understood. Madam Clerk, could you check with Mr. Kelly and see if he can make it, and then we can move to 1:30 if that's possible?
Yes, I would be happy to. And does the board also wish to maybe schedule out over the summer so you can hold this spot? If the 3rd Thursday of the month works for everyone, we could hold this spot on your calendars through August.
That sounds great. Yeah. I mean, it works for me.
Sure. That's fine. Yeah, I would rather schedule out than not.
1:30 to 3:30 as opposed to 2 to 4.
Yeah.
Provided
Well,
it works for Terry.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah. And and also Jennifer, if you could for this next meeting when you email us about it, just if you could put somewhere it's in person. I get a cold sweat thinking is it in person or is it online? I don't remember, and the meeting's 5 minutes away, and I'm not even close to the, you know what I mean? So that'd be really helpful because it gets confusing.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, then I think I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I second.
Any opposition?
No.
Hearing none. All right, Kelly and Patrick, thank you again for joining us. I look forward to seeing you in person next month.
Yeah.
And
Hey, Kelly, I got a quick question for you.
Yeah.
I didn't hear, what do you do? Are you an attorney?
Yeah, I'm an attorney here in Anchorage. I do mostly oil and gas and regulated utility stuff.
Gotcha. Well, in looking at the board here, I remembered a joke years ago about something about a pilot, a rabbi, and an attorney being on an airplane, and I just thought we got the perfect combination.
Awesome.
And I think, Kelly, you are now our official, one of our members is required by code to be a member, or maybe by Alaska Bar Regulations required to be a member of the bar. And I think that now is you, because that was not me, that was Joan Wilson. And after she stepped down, I realized that looking at Paul's report. I don't know if others have an opinion on that, but I think that means you're officially now our starred member of the bar. I don't think you don't get much for that other than an asterisk, but yeah.
I'm not sure, Becky. I mean, I think you qualify as well because I know that the 8th floor asked me about that when the terms were expiring. They're asking me
filling in for.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure, but anyway, I think you count still.
All right.
All right. Take care, everyone.
I'll see you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.